Kneel, you curs, for Lord Emu has descended from on high with its majestic demon figure to grace the masses and the ill-begotten with its mighty presence. Lord Emu is here. Well, okay, Goonko is really the host of Lord Emu. Is Lord Emu actually a physical person, or are they just more so the manifestation, embodiment, X, Y, and the other of some sort of power, some sort of god? They just take over people's bodies like a parasite. A lot of different takes on Emu right now. And moving forward, it's only gonna get more and more intriguing because we're gonna see just more and more Emu activity. We know more about Emu in terms of their skill set than we do about Shanks. Emu, for sure, is a primary candidate to be the final villain of the story. So when Emu's making plays like this on Elbaf here and now, but at the same time knowing that whatever's going on in the Holy Land is so dire that they need every holy knight on deck. Yeah, man, Oda is cooking up something fierce. Emu activity makes all eyebrows raise. And this activity in this chapter is so damn eyebrow raising. It's so, what? Bug-eyed? Hello? If I could do Luffy, 3 eyes popping out, I would. Unhealthy as it may be, I would. But this chapter is so damn eyebrow raising that it could be a contender for one of the best chapters in potentially all of the post-time skip. Now, there's a lot of chapters in post-time skip, keep it a stack. But if you were to say that this chapter is, let's say, among the top 30, no problems there. Because this chapter is really damn good. You have to break it down by first its bare bone components. Because this chapter does a lot, but you can argue most of that is in the standpoint of theory. But it still, I think, does quite a bit for the story. So, bare bones. As per usual, we have our page and chapter structure, then the character components of the chapter, and then finally the story progression components of the chapter. And for this chapter, the character section is going to be the heftiest section of the video. So on that note, let's dive head first, Michael Phelps style, into this week's chapter of One Piece. Now, first of all, the pace and chapter structure. For this chapter, really simple. One gigantic part, but you can't argue that there are 3 parts. Essentially, we have the giants running over to Emu and accompanying the kids, and then Emu then knocks out all these people around it. Then we cut away to Robin and Jinbei and that Straw Hat Law that are near Summers, and then we cut back to Emu activity when Dory and Brogy get there, and then they just get turned into demons, get gigantified, and then we see not only the Emu demons, but also the dream monsters of Killingham, however you say his name, they get souped up too, and then the chapter ends on that note. Those 3 sections, because it is broken up, arguably, by that one cutaway with Robin and Jinbei's lot. Talking about what's going on, talking about where's Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, Robin trying to break out X, Y, and the other. And then, of course, seeing Summers regenerate. But at the same time, it's not necessarily so far removed from what's going on, because Jinbei even notes to how that person, Gunko, she's changed so much. That and that alone, you can easily argue. It's all just one really big part, even though we focus on Nami and company at some point in the chapter. So all that to say, this chapter, whether it's 1 part or 3 parts, I think it's still fantastic pacing. I'm gonna say what I normally say here in this section once again, so folks understand my perspective in case they forgot. When it comes to pace and chapter structure, Oda tends to have a lot of parts in his chapters where sometimes you'll see each page in its own individual section, and we cut per page, and sometimes it's like 11 or 12 different parts in a single chapter. Oda will do that, and he'll do that quite a bit. But whenever we focus in on a certain part or section for a long period of time, the chapter quality, I think, tends to be better because it's nowhere near as disorienting or confusing or hard to follow, and we're not cutting around from part to part. Because Oda, when it comes to paneling, he will jam-pack. He will absolutely jam-pack a lot of information in small panels, and in one large panel, he will jam-pack a ton of information there. So in terms of pace and structure, when you have, let's say, 4 and under, I think that's fantastic. And in this chapter, we have 4 and under, which I think is very good. So in terms of pace and structure, I think this chapter gets 2 fat thumbs up. Absolutely. Very good. Outstanding on that front. The largest section of this video review the character components of the chapter. Now, before we get over to Emu, who is the lion's share of character components for this chapter, without a damn doubt, we have to first get over to, real quickly, Killingham, or Killingham. I call him Killingham because I think it sounds better. What the scans call him, but in the official they call him Killingham, which is way more ridiculous, but definitely a play on words. That being said though, so apparently we find out, and it was kind of loosely like confirmed, but now it's confirmed, where the nightmare creatures of Killingham, they can respawn. I quote, "The nightmare holes remain open. They continue to spawn monsters from every nightmare found on the island." So even though it's, let's say, nightmares from the kids, potentially other nightmares from other people are also helping fuel the nightmare creatures that are currently existing and are also making them respawn. So it's an ability that potentially, once activated, it kind of stays there indefinitely until, let's say, Killingham gets knocked out or he leaves the area. These are creatures from dreams with no concept of death. They can be revived at any time on my command. So they can respawn on his command wherever he wants them to, and death for these creatures do not apply. So in terms of a war of attrition, these creatures are very valuable once they're on the field. They're effectively some sort of Sung Jin-woo army. He goes Arise, Killingham goes Dreams, and then they just fight endlessly until, again, Killingham is running out of stamina, he's knocked out or killed or leaves the area. That's my guess here. So that is number one, more insight on Killingham's powers. After Killingham, we have Lord Emu, or as Killingham calls him in this chapter, Great One. Man, when you use the term Great One, the Bloodborne fanboy me just wait a minute, whoa, that's reserved for certain creatures of Lovecraftian Cthulhu origins. That's not something you take lightly. That is not something you take lightly. Absolutely not. And even more so after Emu pulls off its first flex. Now, I'm gonna probably use Emu as a she moving forward. Emu may not be a she. Emu could be, genuinely so, a shadow entity that just latches on to folks like a parasite. Fair enough. Like it's One Piece's version of Parastyle, and Emu is Migi, and Gunko is Izumi, the main character of that show. So maybe that's what's going on here. But let's dive into what we actually know. And the first thing we know is that Emu is rocking disgusting amounts of hockey. Now, it could be the case here where it's actually Emu's hockey, it's the hockey of Gunko, and Gunko has Conqueror's hockey, and Emu is amplifying the Conqueror's hockey in Gunko. That is possible, but I digress. We do see a lot of hockey coming out from Emu/Gunko, to the point where not only does it take up that whole section of the branch, but it appears to take up that whole semicircle half of the Sun Realm, to the point where even in the town, near the castle, they are feeling the Conqueror's hockey of Emu, and folks are passing out from there. These bolts of Conqueror's hockey seem to only focus on the Sun Realm, nothing in the Heaven Realm or in the Hell Realm below it. Keep in mind that when we see these giants that are roaming about on the branch right next Emu, when Emu unleashes the Conqueror's hockey wave, these giants are massive creatures. So someone like Gerd, for example, Gerd is 55 feet tall. 55 feet tall. She's 17 meters tall. So she's roughly on the same height as Gamabunta in Naruto Shippuden. And Gerd is on the smaller end for giants. Someone like Hyrule, someone like him, he's 72 feet tall. He's 22 meters tall. So now we're approaching the same height as Gigantomachia from My Hero Academia. All of these giants, male, female, all these warriors that are coming to save the kids, all of them look like Pinkman. They look like Pinkman in that one scene on that branch. That's how small they look. A herd of colossal titans would look like nothing more than grass on that branch. And Emu's Conqueror's hockey wave is so massive that it covers that area and then the rest of the Sun Realm on that half of the semicircle. And that is for reference of how massive this Conqueror's Haki wave is from Emu. Remember, if we go back to chapter 1137, when we see Luffy and company enter the castle for the first time, the Albert's castle with Roto. When we see the castle, even by giant standards, the scale is impressive. So by human standards, the scale is just completely out of whack. It's so large that Zoro says that he can't even see the ceiling. The castle is massive, and we see these bolts of Haki go across the castle and past the castle. This is a Haki wave that is one of the largest in the entire series. The only ones that are comparable in terms of Conqueror's Haki would be A, Shanks and the Wi-Fi feet, and B, Joy Boy's Haki Knot, which goes on for an undisclosed amount of length. I'm guessing that people in other areas should have felt that. So the Giants and the kids in the area, they get knocked out, except for the Straw Hats. The Straw Hat crew do not get knocked out from Emu's Conqueror's Haki wave, which is, some folks may say that's impressive. Other folks may say, well, that's whatever, and I would say it's kind of whatever, because to me, I expect the Straw Hat crew to be a cut above, even Usopp, a cut above the rest. When you're a Yonko caliber crew, you should be built different. And the Straw Hat crew not getting knocked out is a sign of them being built different. Now, that's the Haki element of Emu's powers. But the vastly more intriguing elements of Emu's powers are Emu starts to transform after the Haki wave, where Emu starts to display wings, the demon tail that was goring Sabo and King Cobra when they went to the Holy Land, and a trident. So this is very on the nose, cartoon devil-like, and they seem to be genuine, like genuine demon wings and the tail and the trident. Not, let's say, in the same vein as, again, 1137, where Gunko kind of makes those giant boots out of the arrows. We didn't see Arrow forge these things, the wings or the trident or the tail. All that to say that moving forward, the powers we're going to see are indicative of what Emu can do, not Gunko's powers. It's all Emu stuff. And from there, we only get confirmation where we see Emu pull out a book, some sort of book with a pentagram on it. And the pentagram is used several times over when Emu makes two cannons, and then she annihilates some of the giants in the area, the ones that didn't get knocked out with the Conqueror's Haki near her. And then from that book, we see two things spawn. We see a short sword, and then we see a gigantic double barrel gun. This kind of gun, I think, that you would see a giant use, unironically. So I wonder if this gun belonged to a giant before, and let's say it was stored in that book. So let's say something akin to Molten Door's World of Books, like a Kurolo ability from Hunter x Hunter. Or it could be the case here where that book is able to manifest what Emu wants to produce, and Emu is able to manifest that in a very similar way to Luffy's goggles or his helmet. Now, the power is real because Brogy is a very tough person. Now, you may say, oh, well, Mr. 3, that's all offset by what we saw on Nugget Island. Dorian Brogy, Sun Scaldia, the piss out of Tom Man Walkery, and sent him packing. So I know folks are tempted, very tempted, super tempted to dunk on the physical abilities of the Giants based on what happened literally over 1,000 chapters ago. Stop it. Recent information is key. So when Bro gets his arm blasted off, that's a big deal. Very heavy power in that shotgun. I'm thinking that this is something that Emu, if it is something that Emu kept, it's from someone that Emu fought maybe a long time ago, someone that was worthy, and then they kept their gun. It's in a similar aspect or vein what we see with Joy Boy. If we assume that the straw hat that we see in the Holy Land is Joy Boy's straw hat, Emu could keep various prized possessions of people that it deems to be strong or worthy or whatever the hell, and that gun and that short sword could be items of the same ilk as the straw hat that we see in the Holy Land. Now, obviously, that straw hat, well, I can't say obviously, there's a good chance that has no power or no real utility for it, so just keep it as a trophy. But things that do have usage, utility, keep them in the book and then use them if you want to. So that is the second element for Emu as a fighter, as a powerful person. The third element is the Domai Irreversai. Now, that's how I'm pronouncing it. You pronounce it the way you want to pronounce it, because just saying Domai Irreversai, Domai or Riverside. It just sounds so much better. It sounds so much more regal, commanding, Domai, or Riverside. I'm saying it the wrong way probably, yes, but it just sounds better, so deal with it, okay? The Domai Riverside. This is how Emu, in some way, probably grants certain powers to the elders and to the holy knights, because we're seeing it happening with Dorian Brogy. Those giants that are near Dorian Brogy, which we'll get them soon, they seem to have the same powers as Dorian Brogy. In fact, they all have the same power. So there is no uniqueness, like what we see with Shamrock's sword or the other elders. Don't see that uniqueness of powers between the giants. They're all the same sort of demon type, if you would, with the giant wings, ultra weapons, even more gigantified, and so on and so forth. But what does Emu say before casting the powers of Domai Riverside on Brogy? I give thee the power of evil, darkness. I give thee the power of evil. In exchange for some measure of thy lifespan, thou wilt receive an undying body and uncanny strength. Under fealty to Mu, thou art unbound by common sense and logic. Demons are the only proper form of life to take. So this is, I think, a very similar concept to what we saw with NL, where NL felt that the proper place for a god should be in the land of gods, fairy versa. The proper form of life that should exist, according to Emu, is demon life. And the first thing is that on the nose, a lot of folks are referring back to the mural, where in the mural, Second World, within the void there was breath. The forest god tamed demons, and the sun spread the fires of war. Is Emu, or is Mu, the forest god of yore, of ancient times? That is possible, though it feels to be too obvious. Because as far as I would gander, based on the mural and how Oda wrote it, it's not only up to interpretation, not just in the story itself, but also for the readers and for the fans, where it shouldn't be clear and distinct as to what this really all means. So when Emu does Domai Riverside and then flips Dorian Brogy's disposition to be demon-like, I don't know if that's what's actually going on verbatim, bar for bar, that we get in the mural. It could be the case here, but it's super on the nose. A more complex thought could be the forest god meaning nature itself, and devils meaning devil fruits. A lot of the themes around Emu, I would say, tie more to void, darkness, the abyss. I don't know how you get that from a forest god. You do have dark forest, but that's a particular type of forest that you would see in some fantasies and some sort of shows. A dark evil forest, a malevolent forest where evil things live. Okay, so it could be playing on that, fair enough, where Emu takes that version of the forest power, mythical zone force ability, and they warp it as the dark forest, not the pleasant, let's say, Bambi forest. No. But the idea is that Emu, I think, has way more ties to the underworld, if that is the abyss/void. The underworld. You can argue one of the first signs shown to us for this could have been with Ethan Venus Juro in chapter 1110. In that chapter, we do see Ethan Venus Juro cut through pacifistas and then freeze their internal mechanisms without doing too much damage to the pacifista. And that freezing sword ability, that freezing slash ability, we've only seen before with Brook, who claims it to be the winds of the netherworld. This is the thing I think I want to really hone on the most. People want to say that this is magic and it's a new power system in the story of One Piece. The problem is that no other person in the entire story of One Piece has ever used magic. As far as we know, magic is not an actual power system in the story. But we do know that soul powers, or powers that in some way interact with soul, exist, and they're quite abundant in the story. Actually, they're very abundant. From Film Red, where you have someone like Uta who can literally take your soul to another plane of existence called the Sing Sing world, that just so happens to also connect to the real world via a demon called what? Taught Musica. Emu, powers of a demon, can take someone's soul and then invert it, flip it around, and then their mind and heart go to where? The underworld, because it gets Domai Riverside, the connection between the worlds, Taught Musica. But King Film Red! That's a bow because you're welcome. I've been yapping about this for damn too long. But either way, you have the queen herself, Lean Charlotte Big Mimi, where Big Mom, when she gigantifies in chapter 1031, we see the same exact soul eye effects from her eye that we see with Dorian Broggie, as if their souls were manipulated in some way, and they also gigantify the same way Big Mom gigantifies, the same way they also gigantify too, and now they're like ancient giant class dudes, several times the height of a normal giant. Even further is the fact that Emu can only do this thing by one seance or a chance, and then also by taking, very important here, by taking a part of someone's lifespan. Big Mom, in order to gigantify, what she say? I'll use an entire year of my lifespan. Anything less won't serve to strengthen me. So Big Mom eats an entire year of her own lifespan, and then she gigantifies in the process. Emu takes lifespan from the giants, redirects in a certain way to alter their composition to become demons, but they also gigantify in the process. Very similar. The powers of soul, I think, are far more important, all right? Got a little soul power in you, yeah. Soul train powers, yeah. The powers of soul, I think, are far more prominent here, even more so because it's underworld theme for sure, than magic and mana and spells and Wingardium Leviosa or Avada Kedavra. I think it's about soul. I think it's about lifespan, things of that sort. I could be wrong, obviously. The idea, though, is that I think the connection between soul and Emu's powers is strengthened a lot, where I think soul has been an underlining hidden power system in the story of One Piece, but I think that Emu's activity kind of brings them more to the forefront by manipulating the souls and Doria Broggie to be what they are now. Almost like a version of Mojito in JJK, where Mojito can manipulate people's souls and his own soul, and by doing so, they transform and he transforms. It's the same thing here, but it's a dark, twisted, evil transformation where someone naturally is a good-hearted, kind, or honorable person like Broggie and Dory. Now, what's also important here is that when you have these henchmen that are next to Dorian Broggie, when Emu has established two demons, those that are between Dorian Broggie also have their Domai River size, and then they also become these demons as well and get gigantified. And one person makes the assertion that it was because they were standing between Dory and Broggie. And so the name Domai River Sai comes from a board game called River Sai, where in the board game, it's like black and white, like checkers essentially. But the way I think it plays is that if you have, let's say, a bunch of black chips on the board, but then these black chips are between two white chips, then each chip between them become white because the two outer chips were white. And so on the reverse side, if you have two outer chips that are black and you have three white inner chips, then following the rules of Riverside, they would flip and they would turn into black chips. Giants in between Dory and Broggie, they flip constitutions following that game logic, and here we are. So the powers of Emu are radical. They are truly terrifying so far. And what's very important also is that the Kieran Graham dream monsters also seem to amplify too. They didn't have that sort of lightning eye effect that we see in Kurokos basketball. They have the Almine Daiki zone eye effects going on here. And they seem to be a lot larger now. And they also have those sort of under tusks or those under teeth that also are like much sharper fangs. They have those too. So it looks like Emu is also affecting in some way the powers of Killingram and maybe also even affecting the powers of Summers. So it's possible because Emu is now embodying Gunko and a lot of the powers of the Holy Knights come from Emu. Just by being in the area, Emu could be also enhancing the powers of Killingram and Summers, which is why Summers can now regenerate after Gabon did what he did, and why Killingram's monsters have gotten buffs. So for sure, a lot there for Emu. a lot there for Emu. But that is when it comes to the character section of this video. And now the story progression components for this chapter, which are essentially very, very simple. Emu makes a move to where the giants that are coming near the kids, they get knocked out for the most part, and those that are not knocked out get destroyed by a pentagram cannon. Then Emu displays his power by flipping the constitution of the giants after blasting off Brogy's arm, which hope in the future, once he's back to normal, we have Lilith make a new arm for him, hopefully, I pray. All right, Lilith, please, we leave it to you. And then other giants, following the powers of Emu, they'll start to turn and become demons as well. And then at the end of the chapter, we have a complete flip of the situation at hand, to where now you have, not only is the fire raging in the library still, but now the demons that have been running around are souped up, and Emu has now forced the giants to become demons, and they have a target in mind, that's Jarul. Emu may want to take him out specifically because Emu is trying to establish Dory and Brogy as kings of this country, so they can have Dory and Brogy under their thumb, so they can make a parlay for the kids, because the kids still need to be captured. Because, and this is my assumption here, it could be the case where these powers on Dory and Brogy, because they were forced upon them, they're not permanent powers. Whereas, let's say if you fully accept the powers of Emu, now you're in the same vein as the Holy Knights, and even more so with the Elders. Some functionalities of Emu's powers may require nobility in some ways. So when we first see Emu approach the throne, we know that Emu's carrying a picture of Vivi and the short picture of Shirahoshi and Luffy and Blackbeard. But most of these folks have some degree of royalty in them, though D-Clan members are D-Clan members and God knows what their whole origin is. Loki is Elbafian nobility, and he was given the chance to be a Holy Knight. Guko herself could be nobility from, let's say, Brook's home country, or a place that Brook visited during his battle convoy days. Who knows? But the idea is that nobility seems to be important, because in order for Emu to do what it did to Dory and Brogy, it has to not only do this whole seance thing, this whole chant, but also establish them to be the next rulers of Elbaf, which makes you wonder about King Harald. When we see his images, again, chapter 1137, we see Harald in that picture. He may be a demon, may have gotten actual demon attributes from Emu, which is why the Holy Knights knew him, maybe want to visit his grave, because he was one of them, essentially. But he ripped off his horns, we know that. And he has a cape, but the cape has like these spikes on the side. And maybe, okay, that's an aesthetic, but it also looks like it could be because they're actual wings. Not a cape, but he actually has wings that he's masking as a cape. And what's also interesting too is the idea of ancient giants, because the fact that Emu is able to give Dory and Brogy horns and they become ancient giant size may allude to the origins of the ancient giants themselves, where they could actually be beings from the underworld, if it's, let's say, a real physical place somewhere out there. Let's say you go down the hole in this lobby and poof, we have theory videos coming out. Don't worry about it, all right? Yeah, baby. So the idea is that they still take the kids, keep the kids, because they're going to be bargaining chips for the entire country of Elbaf in the future, because Emu is impressed with the power of Elbaf, obviously. Elbaf is the strongest nation on the planet in terms of military might, and we're seeing how powerful a few of them are when they go gigantified. Emu wants that power, so they won't be destroyed, because Emu wants you to utilize their power for the future, for total world control, some of that sort. But unfortunately, in the process, this winds up proving Luffy's comments true at the end of chapter 1124, when he says, I don't care if you guys end up being my enemies, you know it's going to be me in the end. And in this statement here, he's referring to being king of the pirates, but maybe flipped on its head, ironically enough, it actually means the giants being his enemies, standing in his path to be king of the pirates, as they are right now as demons. And I remember during my stream, there was a theory that someone had where the sword that Jarul has going through his skull could be suppressing his demon powers in some way, and that's to be able to survive in the first place. So if Jarul is also a demon, this does help elaborate even further as to why Emu is aiming for his neck. It really justifies probably King Harald being killed if, let's say, demon activity was involved, and then Loki saw demon activity, had to shut that down. Because it looks like his dad, in order to protest Emu in some way, ripped off his horns. And then maybe Emu tried to reassert dominance over Harald. Harald asked Loki to kill him. The plot thickens. So, Overall, chapter rating, 9. At least a 9 out of 10 for my rating of this chapter on Peach. Why you see me do this review. But when you see me do a review, you know why. Because the chapter was heat, fire. And this chapter, fire, hell, fire. But let me know your stance on this subject matter at hand. If you enjoy your boys' video content, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side.
See you. Bye-bye.